Greetings. Ibashe Phi, Ibashe Rumala, Ibashe Olodumare. We thank everybody for their patience. We were having some technical difficulties. We weren't able to have sound. So if you see some little videos of people walking around and all that kind of stuff, we was working through it. So um, the class will begin. So real quickly, just want to give a good reference of what is going on for today. Uh, We have been through the 16 Odus. Of course, Ofumeji being completed of yesterday. I want to thank everybody for texting in, emailing in, and writing in about the class itself. It was a good class. Got a lot of good feedback on it. Really appreciate it. And as some of you also know about Baba Shango Dare teaching the summation. The summation is not as much the recap that you may be thinking, but more so we want to explain some of the energies and some of the definition, or we want to give some of the definitions and show how the energy of Odu works. As you all know, in most of the classes, I gave a disclaimer about how we do what we do. True enough, I could go out and get a whole bunch of writings from great people that have written about it. You find the Odus. We could probably give 100, 200 verses for Ejiobe. We could probably give another 100 for any one of the Odus itself and tell you all the wonderful stories, break them down as best we can. But here at OIDSI, we believe Odu is an energy that propagates. It consistently ebbs, and not only ebbs, but it flows. It goes forward. So we understand Olodumare, all of the everlasting Odu that goes forward. So as things goes forward, and Ifa has came from what some believe the Nile Valley into West Africa, into the diaspora, what we now know as South America, Central America, the Caribbean, that has made its way to the U.S. Well, being in the U.S. as an African in America, we see things differently. Our perspective, our perception. So we will take things, we will take concepts, definitions, and we have to put them into our own text. To try to relive the culture of 300, 400, 500 years ago may not be as fruitful for us in the 21st century. So what we have to do is say, how does this energy, which does not matter at any time of the universe, any time of history, but how do you put it within the minds of those individuals who are having a 21st century experience? So whether this was a definition out of a different culture 100 years ago or 50 years ago or 350 years ago, the question is more so, how does it play out in your life today? And so one of the things that we have here at OIDSI, our experience is that because we are scientists, in some ways, human beings all day, how do we connect that which we don't know to the energy of what a spirit is telling us to know in order to bring us the quality of life, the betterment of our families, how we see our world, how we see some of the things we understand in this country. We don't get a lot of feedback on certain things that we've experienced as Africans in America through Odu that was once told through West Africa or the diaspora. What I mean by that is our energy as being children of slaves, our energy of some of the mental, emotional, spiritual, sexual, physical abuse that we went through as a people here in this country will often be expelled differently the way we see Odu and how we approach things. So we do add a little astrology, we add a little numerology. Mostly we deal from a perspective of the Kabbalah, which is universal law, that deals a lot with those principles that holds up this dimension. So when we say we're doing what we do, this is how we do it. And so you might feel that some of the things that Baba Shango Dare is going to talk about, you understand very well, and then some things you may not understand at all. But bear in mind that because this will be an archive program, you will get a good understanding, even if you have to go back and look at it time after time. Because if not for nothing else, it is the formula of how things come into existence and how things resonate. We'll also like to add to it is that, again, we're not trying to prove anybody right. We're not trying to prove anybody wrong. We're just trying to get the best understanding of how the universe speaks to us in so many modalities, in so many ways. So I like to explain that, and I've always put that disclaimer in there because before people run off and say, well, they're not teaching Ifa, from our perspective, he finds the wisdom of nature, the natural order thing. So for us, that would encompass also the stars. That will encompass not just the energies and the spirits of the ocean, but also those energy and spirits of numbers and planets and colors and all other things that's involved with it. So if you are open to that type of teaching, then we welcome you. If you're not open to that type of teaching and you have criticism, we welcome that as well, because we're not here to judge. We have a rule here to keep our eyes on our own mat and focus on our Odu. As we say, stay in our lane. So for those of you who enjoyed the 16 classes, we definitely appreciate it. And more so than anything, we're looking forward for you seeing us and us seeing you over the next 120 plus classes that is upcoming. So without further ado, I want to introduce my god brother. We were initiated together in January 2004, and I've known him way before then, and we still work together. His name is Shango, Obafemi. Some of you know him as Christopher Brown. He is the founder. He is everything that involves the God Institute of God Philosophy. Currently resides in Cairo, Egypt, where he does teach Egyptian history to, we'll say, modern day Egyptians, not the ones who possibly inherited the land. But he also teaches various mathematics, algebra, trigonometry, other modalities as well. They got him doing some other things. I don't have to go into that. You'll see it. But he's also traveled in well over 50 countries. And he's seen the African presence in a lot of the different indigenous systems. He's also seen what other cultures have taken this African information, this African science, and expounded on it from their own cultural perspective and their own cultural perception and philosophical perspective. So what he brings here may seem a little, well, but at the same time is going to make sense to you. So with that, I say Ashe.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Boy.
All right. Bear with me here. It's kind of, I don't want to seem too cluttered around here, but right now I am kind of cluttered around here. What I want to do is I really want Obafemi to go back and talk about Ofumeji as far as the woman that he went to see for a reading. And the reason I want him to go back to that is because I'm going to try to tie in what he said on yesterday afternoon about Ofumeji and his visit to this woman. So that is what I'm going to use as my premise. Ofumeji's meeting with the woman. Ofumeji's meeting with the woman.
Okay, what was mentioned, or what I read, was out of the series of books by Osomare Ibei, explaining Ofumeji. Ofumeji was in heaven as a king. Ofumeji was the son of a king, and it was the #1 oracle in heaven. And Ofumeji was considered arrogant at times, or most of the time, highly temperamental, somewhat harsh, and some people say was almost a dictator. So before traveling to Earth, he had to soften up. And his guardian angel told him that he needed to go see a particular woman and get this divination before coming to Earth. And the woman that they considered a soothsayer, when he got to her, as I mentioned, without giving the name that she went by, I basically gave the meaning of the name. And the meaning of the name was the snail without any limbs, or the snail without any hands or feet. The snake that moves on its abdomen. So if her name was Mary Doe, and that was the meaning is that which has no hands, no feet, and that which moves, the snake that moves on its abdomen. And when he saw her, she was also one that had leprosy. So when he saw her, he said, Ekpa, which is what the diviner will say if Ofumeji comes through Iking or through the Opele. The diviner, the Iyawo will say that, which means it's a statement of astonishment. So what you see Baba Shango Diary writing on the board, the snail without feet or hands, the snake crawling on his or her stomach.
Or abdomen. Yes.
Or abdomen, as it said in the book. Ashe.
Okay, now, we're working with limited resources here, so if you have paper and pen, what I want you to do is write this down, because I'm going to have to use this board for other things. So I want you to remember this as a reference point. Main thing, snail, snake, or serpent. I want you to write this down because we're going to use this as a reference point, as a premise. Because we're going to go into many other things, but I want you to remember this because we're going to go back to it. And if I go off on a tangent and forget, I'm going to blame it on the people in the audience if they don't bring me back to this premise. A snail without feet.
Go to the word like the snail.
The snail without feet or hands. Snake or serpent crawling on his or her, because some cultures the serpent is a her, and in some cultures the serpent is a he. Okay?
That is the name of the woman.
And then, or abdomen or stomach. This is the meaning of the name of the woman that Ofunmeji, the senior Odu in Orun, heaven, went to go see before he came down to earth. Okay? Very important. Now, I'm going to...
And for what reason did he go see her? To
soften him up. To bring him more humility. Because he was a king in heaven. Or he was a son of a king, in heaven. All right, so we got that. Now, also what I want to touch on, if you have the manual in your possession, you may not have it right in front of you, but there are some things I want to go over as a review so you will understand where we are coming from today. One of the things that I want to cover is there are 7 cosmic laws. It's very important for you to know or understand these things. The first law is the law of mentalism. I'm not going to put it on the board. I'm going to give you time to write it down if you don't remember. The first law is the law of mentalism. The second law is the law of correspondence. As above, so below. So below, as below, so above. Things that are within are things that are out. Third law, law of vibration. Everything is in constant motion. Nothing is at rest. Then you have the law of polarity. Polarity. Hot, cold, wet, dry, hard, soft. Then you have the law of rhythm. Everything ebbs and flows. Then you have the law of causation. Every cause has an effect. Every effect has a cause. And then you have the law of gender. Masculine and feminine. Those are the 7 laws, the 7 cosmic laws that govern the universe. So remember that as we move forward. Also in the manual, we talk about mathematics of the Odu. In the Odu, or in the science or the mathematics of the Odu, we talk about expansion and contraction. We talk about the laws of opposites, and we talk about reciprocals. Now, I'm going to put something on the board. Hopefully, I'll be able to write it big enough for you to see. If you have questions, send them in. Right now, I'm just laying down groundwork so you'll understand where we're going. If you remember high school mathematics, you should have learned base 2 mathematics. Base 2 mathematics, in case you can't see me, let me squat down. And base 2 mathematics, you will hardly ever find anything on base 2 mathematics except on the African continent. Base 2 mathematics was brought to the African continent by the North Africans into Spain hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But I'm going to go ahead and write this. Can you see that? That's too small?
Yeah, that's good.
Can we see? Can they see that? All right, I'll do it bit by bit here.
Yeah.
Because if you see what I have on the board, this is considered base 2 mathematics. Now, I know I'm probably confusing you. I probably should have started off with the positive numbers, but hey, sorry, I didn't think about it. This is 2 to the negative 1 power. Now, I'm going to give you some examples in the positive side so you won't get too confused. Example, if I was to give you 2 to the first power, the answer is 2. If I was to give you 2 to the second power, the answer is 2 times 2, and we know that equals 4. Okay? So if I have 2 to the third power, that is saying 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. Okay? So you have that down, I'm assuming. But if I take the negative exponent, 2 to the first power is 2, but the negative exponent produces what we call the reciprocal. Reciprocal. The reciprocal of 2 is 1 over 2. We understand that anytime we have a whole number, it can be rewritten as 2 over 1. The reciprocal of 2 over 1 is 1 over 2. So anytime we have a negative exponent, we take the reciprocal of its positive counterpart. We take the reciprocal of its positive counterpart. So if we have 2 to the negative 2, the positive counterpart is 4. Therefore, its reciprocal is 1/4. 2 to the negative 3, 2 to the 3. That's 8. Its reciprocal, 1/8. 1 is getting, 1 divides, 1 multiplies. 1 expands, 1 contracts. Also, if you look, if you have 2 and 1, now you have 1 and 2. I just want you to get that concept. 2 and 1, 1 and 2. These are called reciprocal. Now, don't laugh at me if I misspell the word. Reciprocal. 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 Okay? 1/4. The reciprocal is 4. Does everybody understand that? Everybody understand that? Now, I want you to look closely. -1 and 1. 2, -2. On the number line, that is considered its opposite. So now we are looking at not just the reciprocals, we're also looking at opposites. All right. Bear with me because I know I might be taking a long time to lay down this groundwork. Okay. Let's look at a Odu. This is Etiopia. This is Oyekumeji. Forgive me for putting my butt in your face. All right. This is Etiopia. This is Oyekumeji. One represents light. One represents darkness. The opposite of light is darkness. The opposite of light is darkness. So, when you're dealing with mathematics, when you get into linguistics, what we call reciprocal, it literally means to go back or to go and return. Reciprocal literally means to go and return. So I want you to remember that. Inverse. In mathematics, the inverse is its opposite. Opposite. So we have inverse and we have reciprocal. Inverse is opposite. Reciprocal is twin. Okay? Reciprocal is twin, inverse, opposite. Now let's look at Odu. So if inverse of Ejiobe or Yekumeji. reciprocals, then let's look. We have Ogbe, Oyiku. Notice, this is Oyiku, Oyiku, Ogbe, Oyiku. So if we look at the board, Ejiogbe, Oyikumeji, opposites, inverses. Oyiku Ogbe, Oyiku, reciprocal. One is going, remember what we said before. In mathematics, we'll say if 2 over 7 is one thing, its reciprocal would be 7 over 2. In mathematics, or in linguistics, in language, reciprocal gives us the indication of one thing leaving and going one direction and then coming back. So reciprocal alludes to energy, or as we say, Oyiku visiting Ogbe, and then Ogbe visiting Oyiku. They are reciprocals of each other, i.e. twins. Twins. Okay? Twins. Ejiogbe is all light. Oyikumeji is all dark. Therefore, they are not twins of each other. They're not reciprocals of each other. They are inverses of each other. They are opposites. Therefore, when we get into Oyikumeji and Ogbe Oyiku, or Oyiku Ogbe and Ogbe Oyiku, they are twins, but they also are made up of its opposites. Okay, good. Let's move on. Hopefully everybody understands that concept of twins and opposites.
Yes.
One more concept. Take probably about 1 minute. If I have, let's just say we have Ogbe Oyiku, and we say we have, not Ogbe, but excuse me, Yirosu, and we say we have Owar. These, notice this is light, this is dark, this is dark, this is light. These are like opposites. But also, if you look above, so below, so below, so above. Another concept of the law of correspondence. All right. Everybody with me?
Yes.
So now we know that we have 16 Medjis. 16 Medjis. And have in mind, I have not forgotten about Ofun Medji going to see the woman. Okay? You have 16 Medjis. The Odu. Okay? Odus. We also, in another creation story, talk about, say for instance, we say we have Olo, Du Mare. In the same creation story, we have O Shu Mare. Okay? If you look at the word, you have Olodu. Okay? We call it lesions. So Olodumare, one of its meanings is everlasting old do go forward, but also is broke down to Olodu or more ere. Olodu or more ere, which stands for Olodu. We can say that could be the 16 Medjis. Also, there's another creation story in Yoruba land. He was a prodigy, a child prodigy, meaning he was very smart, very wise. And then you have child, or offspring. Ere is the boa constrictor, serpent. Okay? Serpent. So Olodumare can also be explained as the 16 Medjis who are the child of the serpent. Okay? The child of the serpent. It can also represent the king or the child prodigy who was so smart that the earth could not contain it, therefore had to go live in the sky. And there was something that was created that the child, Olodu, and its mother, the serpent, came up with to make sure that they would always communicate with one another. And the thing that was put in the sky, which was a reminder of the communication between the child and his mother, was the rainbow. Was the rainbow. The rainbow, of course, is Oshumare. 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 The rainbow serpent. The rainbow serpent. So now what we have Oshumare connected to Olodumare. We also have Oshumare connected to Olodu, which is associated with the 16 Medjis. So now, we have a connection between Olodumare, Olodu, 16 Medjis, and Oshumare. We know that Olodu is 16 Medjis. We also know that it's the child of the serpent. And we also know that Oshumare is the rainbow serpent. Let's break down the word. Hope I'm not being too boring to you. Oshu. Omo. Ire. Oshu stands for Oshu Ba. Omo. Ire. Oshu Pa is the moon. Okay? Child. Serpent. Oshu. Oshu Pa. The moon. Oshu. Ashe. All of it is connected. It deals with females. Menstrual cycles. Which is the Ashe power. Ashe. Now what we have is the connection between the moon, the serpent, and the Odu. The moon, the serpent, and the Odu. Now I want you to reflect back in the very beginning when Ofun Meji had to go see this woman. Had to go see this woman. Because he had to be humble. He had to be broken down. And who did he see? A woman. Like a snail with no hands, no feet. And a serpent crawling on her abdomen. Now, don't forget, I'm going to tie in the snail in a minute. So now we got the moon, we got Olodu, and we got the serpent. And we got the 16 Medjis. All right. Now, hope everybody follow. Okay. Now, what I want is you to understand everything I've spoken to you so far has been Yoruba culture. Yoruba culture. Now I want to tie something in to give us an even better understanding of what's going on here. I am going to read something to you. Hopefully I won't be too boring. It won't be too long. It's called Mathematics of the Odu Part 2. And we talk about in Part 1, we talked about how the binary system as we know it is basically comes from something we call geomancy, which was a European divination system that was brought by the Africans around maybe the 9th, 10th century. Okay. During this time, there were stories that were created. And one of the stories that was created, remember the Moors were Muslim. These Muslims, literally from Africa, had a divination system that had 16 markings. These 16 markings were the Odus. So if you ever see somebody that practices Islam, and they try to say that if you practice indigenous African spiritual system, tell them that they have their own story or their own version. And I'm about to read this to you right now. But I'm going to give you a little background. And it says, the binary system is how computers communicate with each other today. So without the binary system, there would be no computers. And the binary system as we know it was brought to Europe by the Africans. It was brought to Europe as a divination system. And from this, Leibniz, which is known as the father of calculus, during his dissertation, took this concept and ran with it. And today, we have computers. But let's move on. The binary system is based upon geomancy, which means divination of the earth. A divination practiced by alchemists in Europe that was brought there from North Africa via Spain. Remember Spain, the North Africans ruled Spain or some of Spain for over 700 years by one of the dynasties that ruled were known as the Almoravids, which was from deep into West Africa, who ruled from Senegal all the way up into Spain. That's right, black folks. Now let's listen. African black people, okay? I've been there, seen it, got the t-shirt, got the pictures. Now, and it says, the binary system is based upon geomancy, a divination practiced by alchemists in Europe that was brought there from North Africa via Spain by Hugo Santalla. So if you don't believe me, you can look it up. His name was Hugo Santalla. Hugo Santalla. Hugo Santalla. Okay? This was the individual that they say that Europe was brought, the geomancy was brought to North Africa via Spain by Hugo Santalla. Okay? Notice it says through Spain because the Moors, the Africans, were in Spain. Santalla brought it forth throughout the rest of Europe. Santalla had received it from Islamic mystics. Hugo Santalla received what we call geomancy, and their thing looked like this. This is single, this is double. Single, double. This is equivalent to our Oshe. This is equivalent to our Oshe. This is the geomancy markings that was in Europe. This is what we use today. So it's the same concept. Okay? It's the same concept. So now, Hugo Santalla brings it from Spain. Santalla receives it from Islamic mystics. Okay? In the 12th century. Writings about geomancy, or the Muslims call it, the Muslims call it Ilm al-Rahman. ILM al-Rahman. RAML. And it stands for Writings in the Sands, or the Science in the Sand. Okay? We learned that Godfrey, ILM space AL dash RAML. This goes all the way back to the 9th century. 9th century is 800. Okay? We learned that Gottfried Leibniz brought this concept of geomancy. He wrote about it. He brought it in his dissertation. Leibniz, the father of calculus, literally brought this concept that came from Africa. He wrote it in his dissertation. Okay? So we don't get credit for being the fathers of the binary code, but what we call the binary system literally came from Africa. It serves as a foundation of what became known as the binary system. Gottfried Leibniz was a German mathematician, and I want you to think very closely what I'm about to say to you. Gottfried Leibniz was a German mathematician who studied Chinese philosophy and the I Ching. The I Ching is a subset of the Ifa org. It's based upon laws of opposites, but theirs is 2 base 6, and Ifa is it's base 2 raised to the 8th power. Chinese, 2 raised to the 6th power. The African continent, 2 raised to the 8th power. Gottfried Leibniz studied Chinese philosophy and the I Ching, a divination system of 64 hexagrams that is based upon the binary. Leibniz was not only a mathematician and philosopher, he was also a member of the Rosicrucian Society. If you don't know who the Rosicrucians are, they are a mystical body who believe that they are connected to ancient Egypt. To ancient Egypt. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I want you to get a background for what all this is. Are there any questions?
The Moors being black, is it true they're not always synonymous with Muslim?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, they were asking the Moors were black and not always synonymous with Muslim.
Correct, because I mean, you could be a Moor and not be a Muslim. You could be a Christian Moor. You could be a Jewish Moor, because the root of the word Moor is black. So you don't have to be a Muslim. But because the Muslims were the ones in control in Spain, Muslim was associated. I mean, Moor became associated with Muslim, or with Islam. All right. Also, it says Leibniz was not only a mathematician and philosopher, but a member of the Rosicrucian Society, an esoteric society that studied metaphysics and mysticism and claimed that their origins go back to ancient Egypt. He was an inventor and a thinker ahead of his time. Leibniz had been inspired by Raymond Lull's binary logic machine. Raymond Lull's binary logic machine. Raymond, R-A-Y-M-O-N-D. Raymond, R-A-Y-M-O-N-D. Lull, L-U-L-L. He was an inventor who invented something called the binary logic machine. Okay? It was invented centuries prior. During this time, Raymond Lull came in contact with Moorish astrologers. Moorish astrologers. Now I want you to think about that. Moorish astrologers. These were Muslim astrologers. Today, they may not want to accept those things, but in the 13th century, Muslims were the ones who were the leaders in astrology. Now, Raymond Lull invented a binary logic machine based upon concepts that these Moorish astrologers, the concept of information that he gave them. So if he creates a machine, a logic machine called the Arsa Magna, A-R-S-A. A-R-S-A. You can look all this up. A-R-S-A Magna. Okay? This was a machine that Raymond Lull created based upon knowledge from Moorish astrologers. Now, he invented a binary logic machine called the Arsa Magna. Lull's machine was inspired by Zerya, a device that the Moorish astrologers used to foretell the future and receive answers to their questions. These were Moorish scholars, astrologers. Lull's machine was inspired by Zerja, Z-A-I-R-J-A. Z-A-I-R-J-A. This was a Moorish device. Z-A-R-J-A. It's an I after the A. The first one. Not A. This was a machine or a device that the Moors had that would give them answers based upon the questions. It would foretell the future. The Muslim mystics, now I want you to listen to this. The Muslim mystics claim that this was ancient knowledge that was given to them by the prophet Idris, who is known in the Western world as the prophet Enoch. Okay? So they're saying that this knowledge that deals with this logic of ones and zeros, this knowledge was influenced by Moorish astrologers that originally had this particular machine that if you would ask it questions, it would give you answers. And they said it was taught to them by their prophet Idris, known as Enoch. Now, I'm glad I laid that down. That took a while, but I'm glad I laid that down. It is told in Moorish legends that Idris was taught the lines of the sand in divination, okay, by the angel Jibreel. It is told that one day Idris was drawing figures in the sand because of boredom. Because he was listening to me, he got bored and started drawing lines in the sand. This is Idris. And it is told that one day Idris was drawing figures in the sand because of boredom when a surprising visitor approached him and asked him what he was doing. He explained to him that he was just trying to keep himself entertained. The visitor quickly told him that he was doing a very serious thing. Idris, not understanding at the time, denied this claim by the visitors. The visitor instructed him to draw another figure. This continued until there was a total of 16 figures. Now this is a Muslim story. Okay? The visitor then gave him the proper order and meaning of the 16 figures. All throughout Africa, the 16 figures are known. In Ifa, we call them Odus. In Europe, they called it the 16 markings in geomancy. All throughout Africa, the 16 figures are known, but historically, base 2 mathematics was not found outside of African society. The divination practice in Africa might not have been monolithic, but in principle and in essence, it was the same. 16 markings in the laws of opposites. Okay? Now, we've established that. And so, we've also established that it's associated with the moon.
Yes.
We've also established it's associated with the rainbow.
Okay.
In India, you have something called DER, order. So what we have in India, we have 16 phases of the moon called kalas. Each one of these kalas are governed by 16 goddesses. These phases of the moon, as we illustrated earlier, is connected with the 16 odus. Also, we showed earlier that the Africans learned about the laws of opposites. If I didn't say it, I'm saying it now. The Africans learned the laws of opposites through observation of the moon. So what we have are African people, and not just people of African descent, but also people in other parts of the world, through the observation of the moon, learned about the laws of opposites, and studied how things came into form. In India, we call it the 16 Nitya, who govern the 16 phases of the moon. These 16 phases of the moon are associated with the 16 Medjis in Ifa. And we also understand that this moon is also associated with the serpent. If you look at the moon sheds its light. What do I mean by that? When the moon comes out of the darkness, it continues to increase. It is renewing its light. As it gets to its highest point, which is the full moon, after the full moon, he starts to shed its light. And then it brings rebirth and brings forth new skin. Just as the moon sheds its light and is reborn again, so is the serpent that sheds its skin to bring forth new skin. So what we have is symbolism.
Preach.
The moon and the serpent's symbolism is identical. Okay?
Yeah, wow.
Y'all sick. So what we have are the 16 odus associated with the 16 phases of the moon. In India, we also have what we call yantras, which you can meditate on and visualize during those times. All right. Everybody follow me on that.
Yes, sir.
All right. We almost there. Are there any questions so far?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
I see the connection with Odu being inherently feminine,
Yes.
and the Niti are inherently feminine.
Yes.
Do we know if the divination system within the Muslim tradition was inherently feminine?
I probably couldn't answer that properly, but based upon what I see, probably everything was masculine. I mean, at least on the surface. Because we know it is feminine, all you got to do is go into a mosque. The mosque is created through feminine principles. But most of the time, only men go in. Just like the Kaaba is a feminine principle. But only men marching around it. The church itself is feminine. But it wasn't until recently where the women could even preach in the church. Everything was masculine. But the principle was feminine. Why? Because in antiquity, it wasn't about the woman in the church or in priesthood. It was the man trying to get in contact with his feminine side. Does that make sense? So when we talk about You know, we talk about these principles. Yeah, all the principles are feminine. Why? Because the universe is feminine. The feminine principle gives birth to light, which is masculine. And then he looks back on itself to see his mother. Okay? So what we have, all of these things that you see are feminine. And if you think about all the creation stories throughout the world, they deal with a rainbow, they deal with a serpent, okay? And when you go back further enough, all of it is feminine. Okay? So just like in Ifa, now we have a rainbow serpent. It's associated with the creator god Olodumare. But Olodumare, if you break it down, it's coming from a female. Why is it that Ofun had to go to the woman with snail with no hands and feet, and the serpent crawling on her abdomen? Why did he have to go to a woman? Why is Oshun? Why was Oshun the first one to find the bag of wisdom when Olodumare said? Yeah, I got you. Why was Oshun the one who found the bag of wisdom? Huh? Notice in the Odu, I think it's Ogbesa, it says that Olodumare said in 19 days, remember that number, 19 days I will drop a bag on the earth. Whoever finds the bag will be the wisest on earth. The first one to find it was Oshun. Well, no man, it was the female. She found it first. She just was hard-headed and make the sacrifice.
Eve ate the apple.
Yeah, Eve did act. Eve, that's right. Eve was the one who found wisdom first. So we're going to go right back. Since you want me to go back to the God and the serpent, okay.
Yes.
So
So what we have now, I don't know why they want me. I'm getting there in time, but anyway.
Now I have a question.
Yes.
So she found the bag first. She was the first one to hold wisdom.
Yes.
Is this any way connected to Sophia or philosophia?
Of course. The word Sophia means wisdom. Sophia means wisdom. Philo means love. Philosophy, love of wisdom. Sophia is the one who sent her son. Just like the serpent sent her son, Olodu. So what we have is philosophy, and remember, Sophie is like Sufi, Islam again. Now, philo, love, wisdom. This wisdom, and remember, what is the serpent symbolic of? Wisdom. The serpent is symbolic of wisdom. So, the serpent sent her son, which produces wisdom. Okay? Eve, I want to hit on this snail, because we've been hitting on the serpent all day.
Yeah. What's up with the snail?
The snail, has anybody ever seen a snail shell?
Yeah.
The snail shell, looks like this. Okay? This here produces what we call the Phi Ratio, and it also produces, and also when you deal with a pyramid, the Phi Ratio is produced. And if you look at the order that our lineage does, as far as the old dudes, it produces a pyramid, and its energy goes and comes, returns, goes and returns, goes and returns. This is the snail shell. It doesn't look very good, but snail shell. This snail shell produces what we call the Phi Ratio. The Phi Ratio is a mathematical constant, which is 1.618 da 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 da. Okay? This is how nature expresses itself. This DNA expresses itself with the Phi Ratio. Leaves on plants grow through the Phi Ratio. Branches of a tree grow with Phi Ratio. Rabbits produce throughout the year on the ratio of the Phi Ratio. So Phi Ratio is the language. The Phi Ratio is the language of the Creator. Okay? There is no Ifa without Phi Ratio. Okay? There is no Fa without the Phi Ratio. There is no Buddhism without the Phi Ratio. There is no religion without Phi Ratio. The human body is based upon the Phi Ratio. Now, from a numerical standpoint, from a mathematical standpoint, there's something called the Fibonacci. You have what we call the Fibonacci. The Fibonacci sequence. Now, Fibonacci did not invent this sequence. Fibonacci was not his name. The person's name was Leonardo da Pisa. He was actually Leonardo Felix Bonacci, meaning Leonardo, the son of Bonacci. We just said Fibonacci for short. Fibonacci was the son of a man who lived at the time in North Africa. Fibonacci wrote a book in the 13th century that was trying to get Europeans to adopt the numbers of the African people that brought it to Spain. The numbers that we use today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as you see here, are not European. They were numbers that in its original origin would be considered Hindi, but the North Africans took that concept and developed their own numbers. So it is called Arabic Hindu or Hindu Arabic numbers. But it was the North Africans who developed and took it into Europe, and because the Europeans were still dealing with Roman numerals, and you can't do shit with Roman numerals, okay? You can't do nothing with Roman numerals. So the Europeans adopted the numeral system of the North Africans that brought it into Spain. So now you got 1.6.18, which is the Phi Ratio. You have something called the Fibonacci sequence. The reason the Fibonacci sequence is important is because, and I'm going to give you a concept before we get in detail. The Fibonacci sequence goes like this. If I have 1, I'm going to duplicate myself. Now I'm looking in the mirror. Okay? 1 and 1. If I look at both of those together, I add them up, now I have 2. Now I add up 1 and 2, I got 3. Then I have 2 and 3, I got 5. Then I add up again, I got 8. I add up again, I got 13. And on and on and on and on. This is known as the Fibonacci sequence. This is how nature expresses itself. Okay?
Expansion.
This is how it expands.
Okay.
Now, so this means if you have 5 and 8, these are known as Fibonacci sequence numbers. There's no coincidence that Oshun and Obatala that came down, there's no coincidence that they would be the ones who would bring things into form here. Dealing with expansion and contraction, okay? 5 and 8. There's no coincidence that you would have, in an octave, you would have the 8 white keys. Within that 8 white keys, you would have 5 black keys. There's no coincidence. Now let's get back on the old dudes. And the serpent. If we look at this 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and 21, I see a combination of 3, 5, 8. Now, this number may not mean anything to you if you're not a student of the Kabbalah or student of Hebrew, the Hebrew language. But in Hebrew, every alphabet has a numerical value. We don't have numbers per se. In Hebrew, we have the alphabet that has numerical values. Example, the word bait in Hebrew and Arabic, whatever, has a value of 2 because it is the second letter. If we have something like Yod, Yod is the 10th letter. It has a numerical value of 10. Okay? And once you get past Yod, it goes from 10 to 20 to 30. It is Hebrew, basically numerology. And so when we get to this number here, there is a Hebrew word that produces this number. This number, of course, is in the Fibonacci sequence, so it most definitely is going to be dealing with creation. It produces this word in Hebrew? Nachash. If you don't know, you're about to know that the word Nachash has a numerical value in Hebrew 3, 5, 8, which is this number here in the Fibonacci sequence of how nature expresses itself. Nakash is serpent. Nakash is serpent. So what we have is Nakash the serpent expressing itself in the Phi Ratio Fibonacci sequence, which is associated with the snail. Because the snail shell produces the Phi Ratio. The serpent moves like energy. It weaves. It weaves. And so, and I got an article on all that, but anyway, that's next time. So what you have is the snail shell and the serpent being articulated through Yoruba culture as an explanation of creation hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years through binary before the European even knew what binary was.
Before who?
Before Europeans knew who binary was. And the reason I say that, well, yeah, I'll say that. Before they knew what it was. Okay? So what we have now, you have the snail shell and the serpent, which is Nachash, and you see the serpent connected to the Phi Ratio or the Fibonacci sequence. Goes back to what I said earlier about the woman that had no hands and feet. It was a snail, and she crawled on her abdomen like a serpent. And it's basically describing how energy moves. We also have shown that the 16 Odus are known as the 16 phases of the moon. Those 16 phases of the moon are known from it comes from what we call the female goddess Tripuri, who within Tripuri has the three main gods within that produces the world. This Tripuri has 16 desires. Favorite food is honey. Okay. So, and the reason I brought that up is because Oshun, who gives birth, remember in the Odu it says that Oshun was the mother of the 16 Medjas. Right?
Right.
Wait a minute.
Uh-oh.
Wait a minute. How is Oshun associated, or the mother of the 16 Medjas, and we just said the 16 Medjas was or Olodu was a child of serpent. Then you go to India, the 16 phases are summed up by a deity called Tripuri, who had 16 years old, 16 desires,
What?
and loved honey. Had a bowl of honey.
What?
Something ain't being told.
What you say, shut your mouth.
Okay?
Break it down.
So,
Feel it big?
are there any questions?
Fascinating.
Yeah, someone said the serpent in the garden, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so, okay.
The serpent in the garden. The garden or the tree in the midst of the garden is you. The central nervous system is the tree. The serpent is the Kundalini energy that sits at the base of the spine. The spine, which is within the spinal column, is the trunk of the tree. Okay? When you talk about the wisdom, and you talk about, oh, they knew they were naked, and all of a sudden now, in our storyline, it starts associated with sexual desires and things of that nature. Why? Then you got Oshun, honey and sweetness. Is because through sexual intercourse, If one is able to control his desires and master it, you raise up Kundalini energy, and that serpent will talk to you. So it's all of it. When you get into the Bible, you have some beings called Elohim. They translate it as God. That's a mistranslation. Elohim is plural. The root, the suffix yod mim is plural, and is so when you say Elohim, you're saying masculine and feminine. But if you go back 3,000 years ago, there were no accent marks in Hebrew. Therefore, the word Elohim can have more meaning than just God and goddesses. One meaning, the same word, you have, this is Elohim, or Elohim is plural. The singular is Elah, Elah or Elo. But in antiquity and modern day, it means tree. Tree, T-R-E-E. So what we have, the word for God in Hebrew in the book of Genesis is Elohim. Elohim is the plural of Elah or Elo. But when you get into etymology, the root of the word, and trace its history, it literally means a tree. So the tree in the midst of the garden is your own behind. Woo! You are the tree. You are the spinal column. You are the divine conscience that dwells in the trunk of the tree. So when we talk about Odu, which another definition of Odu is container. Woo! Yeah. Okay? The calabash. Where is it? It's at the base of the spine.
So can this question from the audience, online audience, so can this teaching be considered the birth of Odu?
Bene.
Which means
exactly.
Okay, next question. You were going to explain the number 19.
Oh, you must be a Muslim out there.
Okay, so, all right,
it's from Phi Jubei, Phi Yemi in Virginia.
Okay.
So sticking with Oshumari, also for another breakdown, does not Osu also bring reference to the staff?
You spot.
Also the spinal column.
Yes.
So if you're looking at Osu, Omo, Mare.
Yes.
So
the serpent of the staff.
You're talking about the serpent of the staff.
Ah.
Now you're also talking about Kundalini energy.
Yes.
Yes. You get a star.
Yes.
You get a star.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Which is in reference with almost every African indigenous culture having some type of reference to a snake coming towards the top.
Correct. Correct.
Even in Australia.
Correct. So that good. You pass. You know, you get more than a star. You get a diploma.
Show off. Show off.
You see?
Right. You get brown.
So I mean, in the end, this is. I mean, now. This here is how you activate Odu within yourself. This is how you activate Shango within yourself. Remember, Shango is the fire that sits at the base of the spine. It's Shango. His servant was Oshumare. So it's the fire that's in the container, because the container is also called Shan. Ishan means bowl, container. Ina, fire. So you have Shango from Ogogoro, which means to purify, climax, apex. Shangogoro, the fire that sits in the bowl that circulates and purifies and goes to its highest self or highest point. So you have Shango with Oshumare, his serpent, Oshumare, rainbow, 7-color spectrum on the chakra system, Mare, the serpent. So you have the serpent, Kundalini energy. You have the chakras with the multicolored, and you have Shango, which is the fire. So you have Shango and Oshumare, which is Kundalini energy. To go further, if you talk about Shango, his daughter name was Oshu, the moon. And remember, as the story goes, Shango was the first one that had divination. He turned it in and traded it in with a Rumila because he wanted to dance. So if we understand that, if Oshu, Oshu was the daughter of Shango, so Shango in his highest state is in alignment with a Rumila because he is the one who had it first. According to mythology, Shango came to earth and traded in. Why? Because if I'm at a high state, in a meditative state, I can't do nothing in the world. I can't do good in the world if I'm just meditating. That means I can't go out and I cannot go out and raise up people. I cannot teach them the facts. I cannot teach them the truth. I have to dance. I got to do things. I got to maneuver. And that same story is not just in Yoruba land. It's also in India under the name of Shiva.
So what do you say about people who don't dance in church?
They dead.
Woo! They ain't raising up.
So all of this, all of these mythologies, all of these stories are in its highest essence. Notice I said highest essence because they all play out in nature in its various form. But in highest essence, everything is in you. We talked about odus or geometrical patterns. But these geometrical patterns is your mind. Remember, the moon is associated with the mind. That's why I started off with the 7 laws. Mentalism. The all is mind, universal. The moon is associated with the mind. That's why they say crazy people are lunatics. Lunar is the moon. So what they're trying to tell you is the moon has an influence on human beings and how they behave and their consciousness. If you go into India, they have something called Om. The symbol of Om literally has the moon in it. So the moon is that aspect of consciousness, a symbol or heavenly body that's associated with the mind. So if you have 16 aspects of the mind that's associated with the 16 odus, which basically tell you how you behave and the energy patterns, it's all the same. No questions?
Yeah.
Go back to the 19.
Oh, 19? Alright. How you want to explain this?
They want to do 19, and they also
Law
want
of correspondence is also tied in.
Yes. Law of correspondence is as above, so below, as below, so above. Therefore, the things that go on in heaven go on within you.
Hold on. The percentage of water on the earth is 75%.
The same as
percentage
in the body.
of human water is 75%.
Same thing. Your blood is the salt water, just like the ocean.
Same percentage of salt.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when you get through, you want to get some references for any books online
Books.
or online. This is not even-
19.
All right, the number 19. Well, okay, I'm going to do this numerically and I'm going to do this astrologically. Numerically, the number 19 is very simple. 1 and 9 is 10, which is 1. It's a new beginning. No big deal. The 1 is also the beginning. The 9 is also the end. Okay? So it is birth, death, and rebirth. That is the 19. Okay? Also in numerology, this is known as an internal conflict inside yourself. Okay? It's a karmic number, which means that in the past life you probably was an abusive individual. In this life as a child you probably was abused, and therefore you probably end up turning out being an abuser again if you're not careful. 19, also if I take the number 19 and multiply it by 1, I get 19. If I take the number 19 multiply by 2, I get 38. If I take the number 19 and multiply by 3, I get 9 and 7 should be 57. 19 times 4, 76. And what you end up having is
1,
9, 8, 7, 6, all the way down.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4.
9, 8, 7, 6. The next number would be 5.
And on the outside, it adds up to 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
What you looking at?
3 and the 8 is 11, which is 2.
Oh, yeah,
5 and 7
yes,
is 12, which
yes,
is 3.
yes,
7 and
yes,
6
yes.
is 13, which
Yes.
is 4. Yeah.
So this is the number 19 in this magic. But the real magic of 19 is that every 19 years, let me back up. You have 3 different astrological cycles. Three different things. You got lunar cycle, solar cycle, or the lunar astrology. You have solar astrology, and you have stellar astrology. Every 19 years, the lunar calendar and the solar calendar, they synchronize and become one. Meaning, when you were born, 19 years later on your birth date, the heavens will look almost exactly the same as it did when you were born. So they synchronize. So 19 deals with the synchronicity of masculine and feminine energy. And if you look in the heavens on your birth, 19 years later on the same date, the heavens will look exactly the same.
Woo!
So what
Say that
happened?
again?
Every 19 years, the lunar and solar calendar synchronize. When they synchronize, that means the stars. If you look up in the heavens at your birth, 19 years later on the same date, it will look damn near exactly the same. So what they're showing you is a synchronicity of lunar and solar calendars.
A beginning and an end.
A beginning and an end coming forth for a new beginning, because the stars will be in the same exact spot as they were when you were born.
So is that why in those ages you have major life changes?
Yes.
That's what you're-
And that's
Yes.
why Obafemi say your reading ends on the 18th and begins again on 20th. That number 19 is a hesitancy to bring in your experience.
It's a gray area of effusion, which you're going in from one house into the next. It's a transitional period. So when people say, "Oh, I'm in a month 5, but all of a sudden around the 20th, the 21st, I have these relationship issues. Family members are going crazy. Why? You've already shifted into your sixth energy
On the 19th.
on the 19th, 20th, and 21st. Why? Because when you go into a new sign or a new house, everybody on the planet shifts at the same time.
Well, Obafemi giving a monthly readings on
Everybody shifts at the same time. But based upon your natal chart will determine where your shift is going to be. Okay? Because the sun, which governs us, the sun goes into the sign, and we are all connected to that sun, therefore we all shift at the same time.
So that is the whole concept of 19.
Correct.
Ashe.
Was that another question?
Yeah. You need to talk about your class and
Online course is $349 US. Registration begins on the 7th of September. After the 25th of September, the price goes up to $399 US. The reason I want you to start registering is because if we're doing it live, I'm dedicating a certain amount of slots per course. Because if I'm doing a live course, I don't want to have 100 people in the same course. We may be able to accommodate 100 people, but not at the same exact time. So I would love for you to go ahead and start the registration process beginning on the 7th of September. By the time we get past the 25th, the price goes up to $399. I will, in the next couple of days, give a definite day and time for the beginning of the class, which will be the second week, not the 2nd of October, but the second week. Second week. I know this is junky, so I hope you're listening. We will send out
an email.
We will send out an email so everything will be clear. But the classes begin the second week of October. The courses are, it is 8 2-hour live sessions. You will learn the intricate details of numerology. I probably will have another course after the fact to go into more detail. But once you leave this particular course, you will know how to do your own chart, other people's chart. You will learn how to read it, go in depth, understand how to predict certain energy in the future, and then once you feel like you're proficient, you can go ahead and take the second level course that goes even into more detail.
Could you explain the connection for Tosin, the older ones.
I don't know. What is Tosin's question? What does he not? What do you not understand, my brother? Here, if you guys are paying attention, Resh. These are Hebrew letters. The Hebrew alphabet, as you see it today, is not its original alphabet. The Hebrew alphabet does not look like what it looks like today. The actual Hebrew alphabet originally came from Canaanite, and they were hieroglyphs. And those hieroglyphs from we call the original Hebrew Canaanite script originally came from Egypt. Okay, we've proven that. So this here is called Resh. The Hebrew glyph for Resh was a head, H-E-A-D. Okay, a head. You have Tav. The original hieroglyph for Tav was a cross. It meant covenant. It meant covenant. Resh, it means like the head. It means leader. It means the chief. It means the first. So now you have the head. Tav is covenant, which is a cross, and it was a representation of the body. The body. So what you have, I'll put it over here, head, body, okay? And then you had Samek. Samek is a prop or something you lean on, support, okay? Then we have the number 6, which is associated with Vav, and it is a nail. Okay? This over here in your body is the spinal column. Spinal column. Okay? And then, of course, the Vav, the number 6, is the number of a man. The number of a man. Now I'm jumping ahead, but if you add these numbers up over here, you get 666. This here is what we call the ordinal order, or the ordinal value.
Let me know when you can answer that question.
And this is known as the actual value. Go ahead.
Okay, if the Hebrew have numbers that correlate with their words, do the Yoruba have numbers that correlate with their words?
Not to my knowledge. I could be. I may not be on that level to know that Yoruba, but not to my knowledge. The way I break down Yoruba is through etymology and linguistics. And usually, what happens in the Hebrews, they use this system as codifying their wisdom. Codifying their wisdom. When we say 42, the number 42 is men or men, bait. Men is water, bait is house. Mem has a value of 40 because it is the 13th letter. Bait has the value of 2 because it's the second letter. And so 42 represents the house of water. But the house of water, if we look at the ordinal value of 20 and 22, is 42, which is talking about the upper and lower part of your body. The head and your lower limbs. When we go into Egypt, you have something called the 42 nomes. The 42 nomes is 20 in Lower Egypt, 22 in Upper Egypt. When you go into the book of Numbers, chapter 33, it talks about the 42 stations. The 42 stations that the children of Israel must go through or must pass through before they get to the promised land. If you go to Egypt, there are 42 gods or the 42 declarations of innocence that you must go through and pass before you go into the land of Osiris, i.e. the land of reeds, which would be equivalent to your head.
So you said something about 40 and 2.
40 and 2. If you go into the book of Matthew, it says from Abraham to Jesus Christ there are 42 generations. It starts talking about the generations of Jesus Christ. It starts with Abraham, and then in verse 17 it says now Christ is basically born. So what we have is 42 generations, but if you count the names, you only have 40 names. The 40 and 42 are very much associated with each other. 42 being 40 plus the 2. The 40 represents a compounding of the value of 10 4 times. Remember, the number 10 is the Yod, the hand of God. It's the numerical value 10 is Yod, the hand of God. So if you have 40, you have 10 4 times. You have transformed. So 40 deals with a transformation process. 42 is dealing with going through tribulation to bring forth the transformation process. It also takes the 42-degree angle of light when it hits the raindrop produces the rainbow. So the rainbow is produced at a 42-degree angle. The 42 is what you got to pass through in Egypt to get to the land of Osiris. The 42 is also the number that you must pass through to get to the promised land in the Bible. 42 is the 42 generations that you must go from Abraham to Christ. 42 is also the 42-letter name of God.
42 native confessions.
That's the declarations of innocence, the 42 declarations, the 42 gods, the 42 gnomes,
42 books.
the 42 books of Jehudi, the 42 so-called triangles surrounding the central, which is known as the Sri Yantra, which is Indian. All of these things dealing with a transformation process. But the numerical standpoint in geometria, in Hebrew text, the 20 and the 22 represents the upper and lower limbs of your body. So let's look further though. You have Samek. Samek is the 15th letter and it has a value of 60. It's a prop. It's support. It's your spinal column. Then the Vav is a nail, which is a representation of man. When you add all that up, because it's dealing with man, it is 666, which is the number of the beast, which is also the number of man. And if you look at this, you're going to have a man on a cross that was nailed. So you have a man nailed to the cross, whose value is 666. It is the number of the beast, but it's also the number of the man. Everybody is 666. Jesus Christ himself was 666 because he was a man who was nailed to the cross. You have to go beyond the beast, the lower nature of man, and transform up the ladder, which is the 42 is the merging of the higher, the higher and lower substance, or we'll say the masculine and the feminine, because the 42 is also associated with Shakti Shiva. Shakti Shiva represents Shiva, the masculine force, and Shakti, the feminine force that creates all. It is the union of these two within the Sri Yantra, which are 42 triangles surrounding the central one that produces it, that gives birth to all. And this is in Tantra and in India. So this 42 is associated with rebirth. And the house of water, of course, when you get into water, water deals with giving birth. It's a transformation process.
Okay, hold on. Will that also include the 42 books of Thoth?
Yeah, the 42 books of Thoth, Jehudi, Hermes, same thing.
You got two more. One is, of course, Tosin, about the connection of Odu and Serpent.
Okay. Where did he, okay, Odu and Serpent. The 16 Odus are correlated with the 16 phases of the moon. Correct?
Correct.
The 16 phases of the moon, or the moon, we show the correlation to the serpent. Because Oshumare, the root of the word Oshumare is made up of Oshu for Oshupa, Omo, and Ire. So now you see that the moon is the offspring of the serpent. Oshumare, or Oshupa, which is the moon, is the offspring of the serpent. Just like Olodumare, Olodu, the child prodigy, who was so intelligent that earth could not contain him, so he had to live in the sky, was the offspring of the serpent, and the sign that was put in the heavens as the symbol of their communication was the rainbow. Therefore, Olodumare and Oshumare are dang near synonymous. When you say Oshumare, the word Oshumare is made up of Oshu, which is the daughter of Shango, which is the moon, and Omoire. So the moon is associated with the serpent, but the serpent is associated with Odu because the serpent, Oshumare, is associated with Olodumare. Just like you have 16 aspects of the moon, you have 16 Olodu, or 16 major or magic Odu of the Megis. So the serpent is associated with Odu. That is why Obafemi Fayemi on yesterday afternoon said Ofu Meji, who was the senior Odu in heaven, had to go to a woman before he came down to earth. He had to go to this woman whose name means a snail with no hands and no feet, who, like a serpent, crawls on her abdomen.
All right now.
Okay? So this mother, or this woman, who basically crawls like a serpent and expounds out and expands like a snail, which is the Phi Ratio, the Kundalini energy, is who gave instructions to Ofumeji. So the serpent and the Odu are one and the same, because you are what your mother is. Woo! The serpent is the mother of Olodu. Olodu are the 16 magics. The 16 magics are the children of the serpent, which is kind of ironic to me that the mother of the Odu is also Oshun. That's right. Brother Brandon really wants me to bring this home about the serpent with his tail in his mouth, dealing with infinity, so the serpent with his tail in his mouth, in Hebrew, would represent this circle, or what we call Samek, which is your support system, which represents the spinal column, which is where the pathway, that the straight and narrow path, which is the actual meaning of the bow and arrow when you talk about a Chosi, which is the meaning of the Babalawo wearing a parrot feather, the straight and narrow path, okay? But that's a whole nother Oprah show. But anyway, so any question?
If you can give any reference, any book, any website, or you just want to wait till your class to listen.
No, I mean, what part of you, what reference you need? If you're talking about the 16 phases of the moon, they call the 16 goddesses, it's called Nitya. You can Google that information and find out the 16 Nitya. All that is are the 16 goddesses that correlate with the 16 phases of the moon.
Books and references. Is that where you go just Google it?
I mean, or you just email me and I'll explain it. Because what you're doing, you have to put all of it together. It has to make sense, but you can just study the Nitya. The Nitya are the 16 goddesses that correlate with 16 different geometrical patterns that you can meditate on, called yantras. They're similar. They're geometrical shapes that house or harness the energy of the goddess. Just like the Odus are 16 in number, the Megis in number, that harness a particular energy. Just like you can meditate on the yantras, you can actually invoke these Odus and meditate on the Odus if you know what you're doing.
Ashe? Ashe. All right. I think that's it.
Ask Tosin, did I answer his question?
Brother Tosin, did he answer your question? We're waiting for him to text in. Someone did comment the power of Odu in women. So.
Yes. Without a woman, there is no Odu. You can't have Odu without a female. It's impossible. Makes you wonder about Odu. Can't be no man.
Shay?
Yeah, Shay.
All right, that's it for today. I want to thank everybody for attending. Baba Shango Dari, thank you. Again, there'll be emails that will be going out. For those of you who are watching this broadcast and you're not privy to our email list, you can always email me, which is Obafemi@Yahoo. If you have any questions regarding this broadcast or you want to get in further contact with Baba Shango Dari, contact me through email and I will contact him. His phone number changes when he gets back into Cairo, and he's still be able to contact you by phone, but we got to wait for him to get there to see what the phone number is going to be. So in the meantime, if you want to get a hold of him, you can email me, and we'll make sure that he gets the information. Ashe?
Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe.